All right, let's get right into it. You've got a tech titan, a disgraced financier, and a bombshell apology. We're going to unpack Bill Gates' recent, incredibly candid talk with his own staff about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. We'll look at what prompted it and, the aftermath that's still unfolding.
Now, this is the quote that really made everyone's ears perk up. And get this, it wasn't said to a journalist or in a big public interview. It was delivered behind closed doors at a town hall meeting for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's about as direct an admission of regret as you can get from one of the most powerful people on the planet.
So that really is the big question here, isn't it? Why make this kind of apology in a private setting? And what on earth happened to force this whole issue back into the spotlight so intensely? Let's break it all down. Okay, first, let's go inside that town hall to really get a feel for what went down. I mean, this wasn't some polished press conference or a carefully written public statement. This was a direct and, from all accounts, pretty raw conversation with the very people who do the work for his global foundation.
So, from what we know, Gates spoke really openly and even to questions from his employees. He clearly understood that this wasn't just his personal problem anymore. It was something that could seriously damage the foundation's work and its reputation. He was facing his team.
Okay, so let's look at the specifics here, because this is where it gets really interesting. Gates didn't just say, "I'm sorry." He admitted it was a huge mistake to bring other foundation execs into it. He straight up said that the whole association was the opposite of what the organization stands for. But, and this is a huge but, he drew a very clear line in the sand. He insisted that while his judgment was terrible, he never ever participated in or saw any of Epstein's crimes.
Which brings us to that big question. Why now? Why this town hall at all? Well, the timing was definitely not a coincidence. It was a direct reaction to a whole new wave of public scrutiny that came from a brand new batch of court documents, what some people are calling the Epstein files.
And this is where the story gets really, really weird. These documents weren't just emails between people. They included emails that Epstein apparently wrote to himself. I mean, who does that? It's almost like private notes or diary entries. And in those notes, he made some absolutely explosive and damaging claims about Bill Gates. So what was in these notes? Well, the allegations were just wild. They included a claim that Gates had contracted an STD and another one about Epstein supposedly getting medicine for Gates related to sex with Russian girls. The files even had pictures of Gates with women whose faces were blacked out, which a spokesperson later said were just photos Epstein asked him to take with his assistants. So what you have here is a total clash. On one side, you've got these bizarre, posthumous claims from Epstein's own private notes, and on the other side, you have a firm, unequivocal denial from the Gates camp, calling the whole thing absurd and completely false. To really get why this apology is such a big deal, you have to rewind the clock a bit and look at how this partnership even started. Because the most stunning part of this whole timeline is that their relationship began after Epstein was already a convicted sex offender. Let that sink in for a second. This timeline really puts it all in perspective. So in 2008, Epstein pleads guilty. He serves his time. Then, just 3 years later in 2011, Bill Gates, one of the world's top philanthropists, starts meeting with him. And this wasn't a one-time thing, it went on for years. Gates later said he knew about some 18-month thing that limited Epstein's travel, but says he just didn't do a proper background check. So the big question is why? I mean, why would he even get involved? Well, Gates's explanation has always been that he was chasing money for his foundation. Epstein sold himself as this master connector who could introduce him to Wall Street billionaires and raise tons of cash for global health. According to Gates, seeing other prestigious figures at these meetings made the whole thing feel, well, normal. But the story gets even messier, because this wasn't just about raising money. When you start to look at Gates's personal life during that time, it becomes pretty clear that private affairs became a very public kind of leverage for Jeffrey Epstein. And at that very same town hall, Gates dropped another bombshell. He admitted that during this period, he had affairs with 2 women, a Russian bridge player and a Russian nuclear physicist, both of whom he met through his own social and professional circles. And this is basically a playbook for how Epstein operated, right? This wasn't just about philanthropy, it was about gathering information. After Gates had an affair and later said no to joining one of Epstein's charity ideas, Epstein reportedly sent him a message. The subtext was crystal clear. Hey, I know about the affair and I can expose it. It was a flat-out extortion attempt.
So all of this leads to the here and now. What's the damage? Because this isn't just about one guy's reputation. It's about the future of a huge philanthropic organization and, the very public breakup of a family. And you don't have to take my word for it. Gates himself put it perfectly. The Gates Foundation runs on trust and reputation. Governments, other organizations, they all choose to work with them. And when that reputation gets damaged, the actual work, fighting diseases, improving education, that gets put at risk. He knows the stakes couldn't be higher. And then, of course, there's the personal fallout. In his town hall, Bill kind of gives his ex-wife credit, saying she was always skeptical of Epstein. But her side of the story, whoa, it's way more pointed. She's called it a painful time and said she's just happy to be away from all the muck. It's pretty obvious this was a massive source of conflict in their marriage. And honestly, this quote from Melinda French Gates just says everything, doesn't it? She is drawing a very clear line in the sand here. She's moved on, and she's basically saying, this is not my mess to clean up anymore. Any other questions are for him to answer. It's an incredibly powerful and final statement. And so we're left with this really fundamental question. Bill Gates calls his connection to Epstein a huge mistake, a personal error. But when that mistake threatens the work of a global foundation and gets tangled up in issues of crime and exploitation, it's just not a private thing anymore. It really makes you wonder, right? Where is that line between a leader's personal life and their public responsibility?